That sounded pretty pro, didn't it?
Yeah, it's fluent.
I should be on radio and shit. I should have that.
You got enough practice now anyway, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Ninja Fox 2. Ninja Fox 2, kill. Ninja, out. 090.
Okay, welcome back then to Fast Jet Performance. My name's Tim Davies, and today we're going to have a chat with a guy who's just gone through OSC and is about to enter the Royal Air Force as pilot in May. So used to work in Nandos, now about to go into initial officer training at Royal Air Force College Cranwell. His name is Jamie. Jamie, do you want to introduce yourself real briefly, mate?
Yeah, so as Tim's already said, my name's Jamie. I'm 19. Like Tim mentioned, I've worked at Nandos for the past 3 years. Nothing too exciting really. I moved into supervisional role last year, so I've done that for about 6 months. Always wanted to be a pilot, and then sort of in the last few years, I sort of developed that interest into a military one as well. And so here I am now. May I'm starting. At the moment I'm unemployed, just chilling, being poor, and living it up for the next 2 months.
Yeah, you need to take some time out because Cranwell's going to be pretty full on, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty busy. So you spoke to me a while back, if I remember correctly. You contacted me because you were talking about whether it was going to be beneficial for you to finish a PPL.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'd done a flying scholarship with Air Force back in the day, and I realised that you had an interest in aviation. So although you'd done a lot of a PPL, it's quite expensive, and it's not going to make that much of a difference. So did you ever complete that PPL or not in the end?
No, so I actually ran out of money before I was able to complete it. So, but what I did do is I got to the solo stage and I did 1 or 2 flights navigation just to get like a nice grounding. It was something that was pretty cool to talk about in OASC. Sort of showed my interest and that I actually invested money and effort into it. So I felt that was like a good section to do, and I don't regret it. It's not a waste of money. But like you said, I'm still sort of on the border. Do I finish my PPL after IOT? Which is initial officer training, or do I not? That's something I'm still considering, but I've not finished it yet, no.
Yeah, no worries, yeah. The thing about when you go through flying training, and I was speaking to the director of flying training recently, and the issue is sometimes that they don't let you fly other types whilst you're going through formalised training, and the reason they do that is because the flying training in the Air Force is governed by Central Flying School, and the instructors teach you in a very specific way. I mean, I was a Central Flying School accredited A2 qualified flying instructor on fast jets, obviously, in the TAC weapons area. So we needed to know that the education you were having was one that was provided by the Royal Air Force. So they're kind of just reluctant. They'd rather during your flying training, you just get the flying training done with the Air Force. Now, of course, your generation is going to be holding quite a lot. So there is interest in you actually flying between those flying appointments. So there's every chance that, depending on who your commandant is at the time, you just go to him and you just say, look, partway through a PFL, I'm holding now for a year and a half or whatever, can I go and carry on? And there's every chance they'll just say, yeah, crack on. Because it's better that you get the education and you fly anyway in your spare time with the service. But there's service clubs and stuff. So one thing that there's a lot of things people want to know actually, because you've got recent experience. Do you want to start a little bit and go back to when you first got interested in aeroplanes, and then just talk us through your school, maybe any extracurricular stuff you did, like team sports or anything, and then how you ended up applying for the Air Force, because you didn't do university, have you? You haven't been to university?
No.
So you're quite early on. So it's quite...
That's right.
I don't take many people at your age. So you obviously done quite well in your application to get through. So people will be very interested in those kind of formative years, if you want to just dial us through those.
Yeah, so sort of gaining an interest in aviation, I suppose it was a bit of a coincidence. I didn't have any family in the military, and I didn't have any family associated with the airlines or the Air Force. I pretty much sat on the remote. Air crash investigation just happened to come on. I thought that's pretty cool. Just carried into that a bit. Carried on getting interested. Went down to the airport and just got involved as much as I could. Obviously, from the age of 5 until maybe 14, there's not an awful lot you can actually do in terms of actually flying wise, as opposed to sort of smashing out the simulators, which I would definitely recommend for sort of building your cognitive abilities. So yeah, up until then, I sort of just had it as sort of a passion. I always wanted to be an airline pilot originally, actually. I joined the Air Cadets when I was 13 with a pretty naive goal of just learning to fly. I didn't really think of it as like a semi-military establishment. So I went in there. I was there for 3 years. I didn't step in a plane, and I actually achieved pretty much bugger all, which kind of annoyed me. And so that almost spurred me on to look at the officer roles, because when I was at the age of 16, so I sort of had a bit of time out of cadets, and I went back. And when I went back, everyone who I'd previously known was now sergeants, flight sergeants, and it just felt a bit weird to me. So anyway, I sort of, when it came to my GCSEs, I left it off in the end. But it was around that age 16 that I started really thinking about the Air Force. It was always in the back of my mind, but I never thought I'd actually sort of send off an application, in which I eventually did. And yeah, I just got really interested in the officer side of things, as well as the actual flying responsibilities. And yeah, I applied in May 2017, so it'll be about 2 years to the date that I actually applied. So about 2 years from when I applied to when I actually started AOT. So it's a really long, drawn-out process, but obviously they do it for a reason. There's a lot of barriers and obstacles that you may or may not have to sort of jump over. And yeah.
Yeah. So when you work in Nandos, you went into supervisory position.
Yeah.
So you were working with guys, and then all of a sudden you became responsible for those guys as well.
Yeah.
And that's not easy, is it?
No, obviously all of them were actually my mates, which is quite weird. I was also the sort of youngest person at my work. It is a young person's job, but I was only 18 when I went into that actual supervisor job. So yeah, it was a bit of an interesting transition. The actual guys, my mates were actually pretty supportive, but it was, quite difficult for the first couple of months to get a good divide between sort of being, the manager and sort of being everyone's mate, because you don't want to just go in and be completely autocratic. You don't want to be so laissez-faire that, there's no point in you being there. So yeah, it was an interesting transition. Yeah,
there's a fine line, and you'll find that in the service as well, because I think we spoke before about how you'll come out of IOT or something, and all of a sudden, especially as you're holding now for a couple of years for EFT, elementary flying training, there's every chance that responsibility for command's going to come early in your position, and you'll be given some logistics or administration kind of role where you'll be the most senior person, and you've been literally 6 months in the Air Force looking after all these SACs, LACs, and everyone else there that have been in there a lot longer than you, of course. And
yeah, of course.
I mean, the recommendation I always have is to speak to the most senior person there and say to them, look, this is the first thing I've done, or this is quite new to me. This isn't my role at all. Can I have a chat with you over a coffee or something, and maybe just lean on you for some advice? Never be embarrassed about that in the service. You know this already. There's some great men. There's some great men and women at all ranks. There really are, and everyone has their struggles. Everyone is struggling in their own little bit. Your job is just to facilitate their world and make it easier for them. So I quite envy you guys in a way, because you get a lot of holding time. That sounds silly, and I know it's wrong, but see, what I've seen is a slightly different side to the service to most pilots that have been just in piloting roles. I mean, I went out to a ground tour with the US Army in Afghan back in 2011, and when I landed at Bastion, you see the Air Force at war. You see the whole of the Air Force at war. And what I say to the young people like yourself going into the service now is, if you're coming out of Cranwell, you've got to make those holds for yourself, else someone will make them for you.
Yeah.
So, find a department somewhere, and, start on a Typhoon squadron if you want to, but then speak to the regiment flight on the base and say, you guys active around the world anywhere, is there anywhere I can go and learn what you do? You'll find it fascinating. It'll be really interesting. So
definitely.
You went, obviously, did you do team sports and stuff? Did I hear that there somewhere?
Yeah, I played a lot of rugby.
Okay.
From the age of 7 until I injured my shoulder, decided it probably wasn't best to, if I wanted to pass a aircrew medical, I thought I'd better sack it off. So I did a lot of rugby, yeah.
So do they ask you about team sports and stuff at OSC for the interviews?
Yeah, anything to do with teams, whether you've been in cadets, scouts, whether you've worked, done volunteering, extreme sports, obviously normal sports, football, rugby, anything at all. And no matter how sort of minuscule you think it might be, literally mention it. It's just sort of another bow to your arrow. And,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I speak to some people and they have very difficult. They have a lot of difficulty in selling themselves. They say, and I say to them, "No one's going to do it for you when you're in that room." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not about bragging or anything. It's literally use maybe 3 keywords or whatever, and just get those keywords out when you're talking about something. And you just got to sell yourself in there. Don't be embarrassed about it. It's really the one, or only might have 1 or 2 shots at it. So academic wise, what do you study at A level then?
So A level. Nothing that you would actually, link to a pilot. I did business, economics, and drama. Yeah. So quite the sort of opposite of what you'd expect. I remember when you spoke to Carl. So if you guys haven't seen the video, he's a Navy guy who's now at Britannia College, and he's doing the Navy side of things. So he's going to be a pilot. But what he said was, he did his subjects because he was interested in them, not because they were applicable to flying. At the end of the day, they're going to teach you how to fly, and if you can show that you've got that actual cognitive ability, it doesn't matter what you've done. I did actually start doing maths and physics. I got a U in physics AS. I failed my economics AS level, and maths I quit 3 weeks in because I just it wasn't me. So
we'll be there.
Was that. Yeah,
all
exactly.
Been there, yeah. Yeah, so I did that on my A-levels as well. So I got 2 E's and an N at A-level. So what I did is I went to university for an HND. So what I try and get across to people, and you know this already, because this is exactly what we do in the Patreon when we talk about, in the Warrior Forum, we talk about embracing failure and using it as a lesson to move forward, don't we?
Yeah, definitely.
So, and the problem that you have in flying training sometimes, I've written about this before, and some people disagree with me, and I couldn't care less, to be honest with you, but sometimes when people haven't failed in flying training, they get towards the end of the flying training, and they build up so much pressure about not failing that they just have an absolute nightmare, and it's really hard to recover them because internally they literally collapse. So failure is really good, and you having those knocks or whatever, and you knowing how that feels inside, and then being able to recover from that is really important. And that's probably what the board saw. They saw a guy who's was able to kind of go, you know what, I've kind of quit something, which is a bit embarrassing. I failed some stuff, which I'm not feeling happy about myself, but I picked myself up and done something about it. And that's the key. So, and then obviously, so you did that. I love the fact you did business, economics, and drama. I talked at rugby school. Must have been about 6 months ago. Actually, it's quite a while back now. Actually, And we'd spoken their economics department. And on the wall was written quotes, and they were really contrarian as well. They weren't, feel-good Western capitalist quotes. They were really interesting stuff. And I remember thinking these young people at rugby are seeing this stuff all the time, and it's broadening their views. You know what I mean? I think economics and business is really interesting to study. I'm very interested in that. And then drama, I tell people that as well. I think I might have mentioned that on either something I've written or something I spoke about recently, where I said, if you want to do drama, go and do drama. I literally said that like yesterday or something. So I didn't realize you did that. Okay, so you realize you put an application in. Is it all run by Carillion still? Is it? I don't know how that's working.
So a lot of it is done by, a lot of the Army actual application is done by Capita. The actual RAF application itself is run by the RAF, but it's the initial medical that's outsourced. Now, it's interesting that Carl initially applied to the RAF because I initially applied to the Navy. Now, what most people don't know is you can apply for the Navy and do your aptitude tests early. So I applied when I was 17 to the Navy, got my aptitude test out of the way, again whilst I was 17, and then as soon as I turned 18 became eligible for the RAF, straight up switched up the applications. Now, it wasn't something that I sort of went in with that in the sort of foresight in my mind. I did actually think, all right, I'll go for the Navy and perhaps I'll actually have concurrent applications. But in the end, I decided to focus on one. And after sort of speaking to the Army, the Navy, and the RAF, I realised, well, I'll just swap it over to the RAF. And what that meant was, say for example, time is valuable. And say for example, I failed the aptitude tests when I was 17. Well, I could do it again when I was 18. If I failed them, 6 months later, that's 6 months of wasted time. In my head anyway. Of course it's not wasted because you can do loads of stuff. But I just wanted to get ahead of the game. And so that's something I did.
No, that is valuable. I mean, that's something that I think we should try and talk about. Time is valuable. Especially at your age when you've got a limited time to get an application in. And if you try and get into the Air Force or the Navy and there's a period where, well, as we know, coming up pretty soon, I guess, is they're going to start restricting applications because, as we saw recently, they've got 350 people holding within the service. That's going to be cleared pretty soon. There's methods about how to get rid of those people. And I'll speak to people about those methods. But if they all of a sudden they turn that wick down about recruiting people in, you might have to sit around for 3 or 4 years. You might have to go to university or something, and then really you want to have got an application in already if you could have done. I always say to people when they contact me, should I apply, pre-university or after university? To me, it's an irrelevance. It's like, if you want to go to university and study something, then you go and do that because you've got a purpose in life. You really want to study it. If you really haven't, then put an application in. Put an application into the service, seriously. And you're absolutely right. I know what's going to happen now. Everyone's going to go and apply for their aptitude test for the Navy, aren't they?
I know, yeah.
The Navy's going to call me up.
The Navy's going to come chasing me.
Yeah, they are, yeah. No, they're going to come to me is what they do. Because the Navy, it's quite funny. If you put an application into the Navy, a lot of the careers officers, because I'm a big fan of the Navy, it's where I started off, of course.
Yeah, same.
They send all the guys to Fast Performance to read all the essays and stuff, and then all the guys contact me, and I'm like, thank you, Careers Office, for sending these 15 people to me to answer emails. So you went up then, you did your CBATs with the Navy first, I guess. Same place, is it? All that.
So it's a Cranwell. So before you do that, you do. I can't remember what the test is called. I think it's just called like a recruit test or something. This is at the Careers Office to make sure that you can, do a bit of spelling, do a bit of, you've got basic sort of comprehension. It's easy. You can prepare for it. You do that once you've passed that, and they don't give you the score. I remember I asked, and he just sort of told me to shut up and get on with it. So I went off to Cranwell then, and did the flying aptitude tests. So that's what the Navy call it, the FATs. Which of course is the same thing as the Army and the Navy. The Army and the RAF. Did that, you get the score on the day, which is fairly nerve-wracking. I remember I was sort of third in line in the waiting room, and the first 2 people before me came out crying.
It's brutal.
Yeah, no, it is savage. So anyway, I went in sort of expecting the same sort of fate, and so he gave me the results. I then took them, went on, almost booked my. So you do fitness test before AIB, I believe. In the Navy, I was going to book that, but I'd already advised my sort of recruit officer that I was looking to go to the RAF, and he accepted that. He sort of facilitated that transition. He didn't just say, "All right, well, bugger off then." He was quite helpful, which I was pretty surprised at. So I decided not to go any further with the Navy application. I then did a filter interview for the RAF, which it's just a sort of face-to-face interview with the commanding officer of the recruiting officer. The recruiting office, it's pretty similar style to OASE. It's a bit longer, a bit more drawn out. It's not as intense. It's not as quick fire. And what will happen there is, they'll either say, "You've done brilliantly, you've done good, go to OASE," or they'll say, "Okay, you can go, but it's probably best you come back and do it again." Obviously, or they'll just outright say no. Of course, but they are helpful. They want to get you through. That's their job, and so they give you as much advice. They'll put on workshops. If you contact your careers office and say, "Listen, I want to practice a group discussion. Do you think you could do that?" I don't see why they wouldn't try. They did it with me and a few other guys, and we all, saw each other again down the application.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. Yeah, it's useful. That's massively useful. So that's great advice right there, is get in contact with the careers office. Now, I've heard this before, actually. I've heard that, now this is just me hearing from people write to me, that the Navy tend to be very active in getting people into stations and getting them visiting days, whereas the Air Force are a bit more kind of backlogged a little bit, and they don't tend to do that as much. So there's no harm in asking, though. Absolutely not, is there, to say, look, can I just come down, maybe get a group discussion together with some other applicants, and we'll be assessed by someone. That's a really cool thing to do. So you've done that. You're at OSC, then you've done your CBATs and everything, OSC, and there were some specific questions from the Patreon group, the Patreon forum then, that people have asked. let's have a look then. You're in the forum itself, so any kind of fallout from this you can answer, which is good. Saves me from doing it.
Yeah, that's it.
They said, right, okay, so one of the questions here then was, what do you think that you had or that you used the most to get you to the position where you are now? So was that sheer determination or grit, or was that like a passion for flying, or was it self-belief? Is there anything that you can sort of elaborate on a little bit?
I mean, I sort of read a post a while ago that you did, you know, I think about the word passion, and I know you're not So, but there is that, there's a drive, and it's something that you want. It was something I really wanted, and it's something I still do want. So, yeah, I did have a lot of determination to do it.
Yeah.
When I started off, I was still in this half mindset. You know, I was in the mindset that I want to be a professional pilot, whether that's RAF, whether that's commercial flying instructing, aerobatics, anything. So I don't think at the start I would have been overly disappointed if I'd failed the aptitude test.
Yep.
But after I came out with a pretty good score, that's when it sort of hit me that, right, well, I've got an opportunity now. And so that's where, everything I did. Yeah. I really made sure I sort of spoke to the right people, and definitely do, you know, if you know someone who's gone through it, don't hesitate to annoy them. You know, the worst they can do is tell you to shut up, and that's it. You know, I've messaged you about 5 different occasions, and you helped me out when you could. Yeah. You know, so I just got in touch with as many people as I could to get advice. Obviously, you work on your fitness. You know, that's a given. You know, if you prepare for that beforehand when you go in, that'll be all right. And yeah, you know, I think.
Makes sense. Makes complete sense. Yeah. I'm not against passion.
No.
I've written about it, haven't I? Yeah, I just see it as I prefer purpose. I think that's a better thing. Passion burns brightly, and then I wrote an essay called "The Passionless Pilot," and it was because one of my students on phase 4, was it phase 3? I can't remember. It was on a Hawk anyway. It might be the Hawk T1. I remember him telling me, look, I'm not passionate about this anymore. And I was like, well, of course you're not. You've been doing it for 3.5 years. Of course you're not passionate about it. You know, this is a job. This is why they pay you money. You know, if you're passionate about something, go and get yourself in a glider or something. But that's the big problem with passion. And this is why when I don't want people thinking that whatever they go into, they have to be passionate about the work. They don't. The work has to be purposeful. Eventually, that is, by the way, because I'm sure Nandos wasn't purposeful for you, was it? But no. I mean, I used to push trolleys at Asda and stuff. Don't get me wrong, that wasn't purposeful either, but there was something very physically challenging about it. When you said about exercise there as well, something I'd like to just highlight the fact that although you're doing exercise for your physical sense and everything to make sure that you're fit enough for all the tests, exercise is extremely good for the mind. It keeps you calm in situations that are quite stressful and everything else. So, you know, really get after that and really get yourself in the gym and beast yourself a little bit if you are working up. It relieves that stress and that pressure. That's excellent. So, obviously, did you have an app or anything that you used to practice for all the CBATs? So did you have anything like that?
Yeah, so I had one app, which I'd definitely recommend. I think if you don't use it, you're almost shooting yourself in the foot. It's called Pilot Aptitude Test. Okay. It's basically a direct replicate of the CLAN test, which is the colours, letters and numbers. Wow. Which is what you could very easily fail on it. So if you've not seen it already, it's a test. You'll have to match up a colour with another colour. You basically have to do 4 things at the same time. It's a bit of a nightmare, but there is an app that you can get, and it's brilliant.
I'll get a link on the site or something. I'll give the guys a call, see whether we get some kind of discount on that or something like that. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Mass discount users and stuff. They probably tell me where to go, won't they? That's what happened. So that's fine. So obviously using apps, that's cool. You talked about simulators before. Any particular flight sims you use then?
Yeah, so I sort of grew up using Microsoft Flight Sim. Yeah. I did a lot of sort of airline stuff on that. Yeah. In the more recent years, DCS World. I think you've
I've used that a bit. Yeah.
It is amazing what they're doing it in now. You know, the sort of fidelity of some of the things. You can't keep up with it really. No, financially as well.
Yeah, it's so expensive. Yeah,
it is expensive, but it is pretty worth it. And I think something that's interesting to me is I remember, so my flying instructor just from a PPL. You know, because when I went in and did the initial landings, takeoffs, handling, you know, he was quite impressed, and he sort of said to my dad, he said, "Oh, you know, he's a natural," and I sort of went, all right, thanks. But really, I thought, well, actually, I've just been playing flight sims for the past 10 years. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm all over it.
Yeah, I was doing some work on the Hawk T1 with Veo, who withdrawn the aircraft now, but we did a lot of refining on that, and it was quite good. With Aerialist, and I'm the strategy director for them as well, we're looking now to put both variants of our aircraft onto something like DCS, so that even prior to you getting into flying training, you can be working and getting familiar with the systems, you see. So that's all part of the information system that Aerialist is going to become. I bought VR when I left the service. Someone said buy an Oculus Rift or something and go and play DCS. I'm not heavily into, when you leave flying, you're not heavily into getting into sims, don't get me wrong. And I can't bother to work all the buttons and stuff, and it does change so much. But I got into the Harrier that I downloaded, and I got airborne on that thing with all the VR on and stuff like that. And as I got airborne, it was exactly, I'm not being funny, it was exactly like getting airborne in the Hawk with the T2, just throwing the gear up, flaps, checking all the panel, looking out, just checking each horizon and stuff. I was like, this is surreal,
Yeah, honestly.
And I just raced around the airfield just shooting stuff, so it's got to take board. Okay, so we got that then. So we talked about the next one then was, just before we started talking, was about the command situation exercise. I don't know much about this. This came out of the Patreon group. Someone was interested in how you briefed your teams and how you tackled the tasks and handled any team failures, really. There's two, isn't there? Am I right in thinking there's two?
Yeah, so, there's a few group ones. So you've got an actual lead, so where you're in the lead of your what's called a syndicate, which is I think a group of like 6 people or something. Okay. Like that. Within that syndicate, you then go and do a lot of group exercises. So you do a group planning exercise, which is sitting down and figuring out speediest time. They'll throw problems at you. You just come up with innovative solutions. You have a group discussion, which is where you just sort of you get chucked a random topic. They'll say Brexit discuss, and you have to say why it's an absolute minefield and awful, and etc. Or you can be the devil's advocate, and you can challenge it, even if it's not what you believe. They don't care. They don't care what you think, as long as you actually have the sort of guts to say and sort of have a bit of conviction what you're saying. But like what you were saying with the actual lead, so that's more sort of you've got a bunch of planks, get from A to B. You can't touch the floor. You can't do this, and you've got a certain set of parameters. I said I didn't get anything out of cadets. I'll sort of retract that a bit. The one thing that I really did learn is the way the RAF want you to sort of lead in these situations. They want you to be very sort of vocal, very like standing up straight, being very clear, concise with everything you say, being enthusiastic, listening, because it's about fellowship as well. It's not just about leadership.
Yes, it is about fellowship, yes. Yeah.
And, essentially what I would sort of say is you're not always going to have the answer to your exercise, and quite often, well, actually, no one actually completed them. None of us did. But if you don't know what you're doing, quite often your team member will make a suggestion. Now, the people that failed were the people that sort of just disregarded what they said. The people that did a bit better, they had a quiet word with that person, and then they took ownership of that idea and then sort of applied it as their own. So they're using their team's initiatives and then giving their own directive and their own leadership, which is something you want to do. Use your team always in those exercises.
There was a Star Trek exercise, and I don't watch Star Trek. Someone told me about this. It was an exercise, wasn't it, where they couldn't pass it. I can't remember what it was called. I was only looking at it like yesterday. Oh, there we are. The Kobayashi Maru. Right. Now, I'm not even into. It's in the Starfleet Academy. People are into this stuff, like you read about. Seriously,
it's all right. That's
yeah, cool. It's all good, isn't it? I mean, I'm not. Someone said that to me. They said, "Oh, yeah. Have you seen the Star Trek films?" I was like, "No, I haven't seen any of them." He's like, "I couldn't believe I hadn't seen Star Trek films." So, that's my life. Is I need to go and watch Star Trek now the rest of my life. But that Kobayashi Maru thing was the trial that they do where in the Starfleet Academy that you can't pass apparently. And I think one of the key points that you just said there is some of these command tasks probably can't be completed in the time they give you. They just want to see how you get on with that.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. That's quite important. So then that was pretty much the command task then. Let's have a look. Then there was the last one that came out of the group here. And this is a bit interesting. This is a bit subjective. It really just says if there's anything that you think that set you apart from the rest of the guys or girls at OASC. And that's because there's a guy in the group that went for WISOP, and he's joining in June, I think it is. And he was deemed uncompetitive to pilot. And he's also asking, it's a bit of a two-part question. So first part, did you, what do you think set you apart from anyone? I mean, did you see other people like bickering between themselves and you decided to stay quiet? Something, I don't know, I'm not putting words in your mouth. And then what roles do you expect to do whilst in flying training hold, and how do you feel about this? And we'll chat about holding again in a second.
Yeah.
So do you see yourself when you were there at OSC that you were in any way different from anyone else that was there?
Okay, so the sort of scoring brackets are split down into a few different things. So you've got your CBAT first off. That is a numerical value that they give you. Okay. That will put you up or down. There's the fitness. Again, that's a numerical value. You've either got good fitness or bad fitness, and that'll accordingly put you up or down. So you want to max out them as much as you can. Okay. Now the actual team exercises, I'd say, I think I'd be lying if I said I could think of one thing that sort of set me apart from everyone. There's a lot to your application, and the interview shouldn't be underestimated. It's a really, really important time to sell yourself. But to be honest, the group exercises, they are just about confidence, humility, and quite often. You just need to get involved. Really, it's about participation. If you want to be there, you want to be there. Yeah. And if other people are sort of being a bit quiet, get them involved. I think it's just about being keen. Honestly, it's really about being keen. Run over the hurdles, jump when they say jump, do everything to the absolute best that you can do. But just make sure you've got a nice divide between being, having all the right ideas and saying the right things, but you also don't want to be overbearingly loud, obnoxious, or annoying, because I actually saw, you can actually see the sort of directing staff literally tell these people to be quiet, and it's kind of embarrassing, and you'd hate to be in their shoes. So don't be overbearing. Let people speak, but just elaborate on. When someone else says something, elaborate on it, and just get involved. Really, just do. Yeah,
it's the same. It's the same that my father's a Royal Marine. He said the same thing. It's not training unless it's raining type thing, and there's always that kind of that bootneck humour. You know what I mean? And it's a very dark black humour. And the key, even when you're you're in these events, is to keep smiling, isn't it? And to keep moving through it. And it's an experience. And I say to people, look, this is the thing about being selected to even get to OSC in the first place, is they're obviously interested in you. Else they wouldn't have even asked you to come up there. So go and enjoy that experience. And the worst thing you could ever do is go up there and be someone other than yourself and then fail it. Can you imagine that? If you weren't yourself and then you failed, you'd just be thinking, well, if I'd been myself, maybe I'd have passed it. So, so the key, go up there, have a great time. It's a real learning experience. And I was going to say one other thing there, where you said that you were interested in not just the military, it was aviation in general. Yeah. To kind of recap on that. And that's what I say to a lot of people as well. A good friend of mine, Andy Neofaitu, is an airline pilot for a BA, I think, on the 787. He runs flight deck wingman. I'm going to get him on this at some point. He's big into getting guys into airlines, that kind of stuff. Big into it. So my kid brother right now, he's out at Emirates flying on a 777. So again, these guys are doing this kind of stuff. It's not for me, but it's for them. And so don't just put your massive focus into one area. Aviation is a huge, big place.
Definitely.
So now you're going in. So May, you'll go in and you'll face what is Cranwell, which you'll love, of course, which is brilliant. And it is an experience. And also, here's the thing as well. I remember this about Dartmouth when I was there. Someone said to me, they said, not everyone gets selected to come through Dartmouth. I mean, seriously, it's a real privilege. So treat it as a privilege. And I'm saying the same thing. I mean, you think about who's been before you across, in College Hall, who's had a beer in College Hall Officers' Mess. It's a real privilege, especially at your age. You know this, right? To get in. Yeah. It's awesome. So, really, really awesome. It's going to be great. You're going to have a great time. The amount, I've had a few beers in my time in Daedalus and Chom and York House and all those places. You'll have fun. Now you're in the service, you're doing initial officer training. Obviously, you're going to put all the effort into that. As you said, don't be the guy that manks around. Be the guy that digs out. Be the guy that helps other people when they're down, and that will be massively noted. Always be that person. So you come out of Cranwell now. So now, obviously, you're probably going to have to wait a couple of years before you start flying on EFT on the Grob Prefect. Yeah. And you knew that before you stepped in. That's the thing.
I did. Yeah, of course.
So you know, there's going to be a time that, you know, you're going to have to put up with the fact that you're in flying training, but you're not. But before you even applied then, you were aware of the fact that holds in the service were quite excessive. I think the report came out recently that said it was going to take 7 years to get someone on the fast jets. Now, by the time you start training, of course, that will come down, because I know people are interested in reducing that. 5 years for multis, 4 years for rotary. It's quite a long process.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, but you knew that before you joined, but that's still something that that didn't bother you at all. You were like, I still want to get in there and be an officer in Her Majesty's Royal Air Force.
Yeah, I didn't actually know when I applied. I don't think it would have changed my mind.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But you know, there's a guy, a friend of mine, who's pretty much directly a year above me in every sense. So in the sort of, so I didn't go to the same school as him. Yeah. But he's a year above me in school. He's a year ahead of me in the RAF. He finished IOT last year. He actually got a back course, and his hold, he's ended up with the Red Arrows. Yeah. So you know, happy days for him. He's had a couple of flights with them. Yeah. And you know, hopefully I'll land myself a fluky little hold like that. But like I'm sure you're about to say, the holds aren't always that glamorous.
Yeah, they'll be fine. Seriously, they will be fine. I would mix it up. Because once you're in flying training, you are probably not going to be able to go and nudge a regiment and get an awesome regiment hold out somewhere. Regiment guys are awesome. That's the thing. I'll go and see the regiment flight. Those are a bunch of awesome guys. You know, they're people don't realise what they did out in theatre and stuff. They're very, very undersold. They're like the special forces type thing in protecting air bases. It's just, they're incredible guys. Go and make friends with them. You'll learn a lot. But also, you know, phone up squadrons, and you'll be briefed on this when you're in anyway. The Royal Air Force is about flying, and you're going to be a pilot. You've got a responsibility to educate yourself on flying, and you know this. So don't spend all your time going off and playing with regiment flight. You know, at some point, you've got to try and get yourself flying. And there's a group captain, Moriarty, at the moment, is Commandant 3 FDS. He used to be a boss of mine on 208 Squadron back at Valley on the Hawk T1. He's a great guy. You'll meet him. He's very interested in getting people on holds airborne. So, you know, go and speak to his office, get yourself down, go and play with Prefect, go and play with... well, phone up the Hawks, for example. I mean, you know, when I was in the Navy, I held down at Fradu, which was 736 now. There's no reason why, if you can't get a flying hold on jets, you could phone up 736. That's Barry, is it, I believe, down in Coldrose, mate of mine. Yeah. If you're still there. But phone up Valley. You know, we used to take holding guys in on T2, used to fly them all the time. In fact, when I was a flight commander, they get more flying than I was. I was like, seriously, you flying again? I was like, you need to do my job. Yeah, there was a guy there who was always in the jet. I'm like, geez. So that's pretty cool. And then anything in between. So one thing we haven't talked about, of course, and I know people will be interested, is what ambition you have for what type you want to fly. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'm sort of... the same as every fast jet jock wannabe. Okay. So I'd love to go down that route. I wouldn't throw my rattle out of the pram if I didn't get it.
No.
I'll happily fly anything, but I would be really, really determined to get onto the fast jet course. Yeah,
definitely. And I would say as well that, I mean, by all means, you know, you got to tell people. One of the things, and we'll cover this in the Patreon group as well. We go deep into this in the Patreon group. You can't expect people to know what you want. The reason I ended up flying fast jets, I think I've told this story before, and I'll be real brief because I want to hear more from you, but I actually went to the senior naval officer at Cranwell as I was finishing EFT, and the whole thinking was that everyone, I was a naval officer at the time, of course, everyone on the Firefly at the time, all the Navy pilots, there was just this thing about going helicopters. It just was what you did. You went helicopters. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'll give Harry a shot. You know, why not? No one else seems to want to do it. And so I just walked to his office. It took me ages. He was on the other side of the camp at Cranwell, and I just knocked on his door and said, "Can I have 2 minutes?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "I just wonder whether there's, you know, is there a chance I can go onto the Harrier?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, if you want to, yeah, it's fine. Everyone wants helicopters. If you want a Harrier, I'll put you through." It was that simple. It was literally, and if I hadn't done it, I'd be on a helicopter. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because my best man at my wedding, Chris, is a great guy. He had an awesome career on Lynx. He's a great guy. There's some awesome careers out there on all types. But people can't be expected to know what you want to do.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
You've got to tell people, and that goes in life. That's a life lesson right there, isn't it? You've got to tell people, you know, make it clear. So, but by all means, go and experience other things as well. I know people that have been out to theatre on Chinook and stuff like this and had an awesome time. And my kid brother's career on Hercules, he was a Herc K captain. He had so much more of a varied career than mine. I mean, he went rogue in Afghan, all sorts of crazy stuff, working with the Americans, wearing bandanas and double strap pistols and all sorts of crazy stuff, landing on dirt strips at night, and you know, I mean, awesome career. Don't get me wrong. And I sort of sat around air bases on jets. So each career has its own fundamental interests. So don't reject all of them. And the more you get to know them, the more you might find you prefer something else. So that's why you need to go and speak to people, basically.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, all right, cool. So you're going to find something to do. You're going to bounce around the Air Force looking for some awesome things and stuff like that. And then how do you feel about, because I know people are interested, especially your generation, so operations, that kind of thing, being away from home for a long period of time. You'll probably be a bit older. Actually, you won't, of course, because you're 19 now. So you'll be mid-20s probably when you're operational. Yeah. Probably won't affect you too much, though. A lot of people only go in at 24, 25, of course. They're not going to be operational till their early 30s, starting a family. So a lot of bases quite remote. Have you got any feelings about that? What about if you go fast jets, for example, and you go from prefect on the east coast of the country, and then you go all the way across the valley, and then you do your T6 and your Hawk T2 training, and you're at Valley for 2 years. Now, how do you feel about that?
I mean, can't knock it till you try it. Obviously, I can't tell you. I've not been to Valley. It's somewhere I'd like to at least have a look at. And I think whether I get a holding post there or not, I'll definitely, make a visit or two whilst I'm in the holding period.
Yeah.
If it means I can get onto a fast jet course, yeah, by all means.
Yeah.
Fine. And I know I'm going to be really sort of bogged down with the actual training anyway. And sort of be surrounded by similar people. I suppose if I was doing a slightly less technical role there and I didn't have so much to do, perhaps I would have I'd feel a bit isolated, in Anglesey.
People do bomb bursts at the weekend, unfortunately. Now it's a slightly different culture. Not saying it's a bad one, but you're in Manchester anyway, so you're just down the A55.
Yeah.
2 hours for you to get home. It's not that bad. I like what you said though about. That's obviously where flying training is. That's some of the best flying you can do in the country, by the way, out of Valley. Yeah. Go to LFA 7, low flying area 7, extends all the way down to the whole of Wales, and you get yourself out there, and this is when you see the Machynlleth Loop and all those kind of Dalgethloo and everything else down there. So it's some great Valley flying. But of course, now the problem is, I guess, for a lot of people, whereas they would have been at York on the Tucano, are now going to be at Valley on the T6, and they're going to be at Valley on the Hawk as well. They're going to go through 25 and then 4 as well. So, and a friend of mine's a boss on 4. It's just a long period of time. I'd say embrace the Valley life, though. I was there for a decade, so get out in the hills, all that kind of stuff, And also, and I'll just quickly say, when I was asked when I transferred out the Navy into the Air Force, and they said, what do you want to fly? Where do you want to go? I said Tornado GL4 at Lossiemouth, because I was never going to go and live at Lossiemouth. I'm from Portsmouth, There's no chance of me living at Lossie. So the service gives you the chance to embrace these different kind of locations.
Right.
So, that's pretty cool. What about like hobbies, interests in the service? Yeah, one thing I try and tell people, you have to remember the service that lets you do some really great things. If you've got an interest in skiing or you've never skied before, for example, especially when you're holding, it's a crazy opportunity to go and do some of that. And there's Eagle schemes. They go and teach you all these kind of things. There's a downhill one. I can't remember what it's called now. Someone will fill it in the comments. But there's one I did as well, which is Nordic skiing. So you go and literally walk around Germany in January, I think it is, on Nordic skis. That's really cool. There's a load of stuff to do, a load of sports where you are especially. So really get yourself involved in that. Anything you're looking at then? So what's your long-term plan? How long have you got to sign up for now?
So it's 12 years with a 4-year reserve commission at the end, so 12 to 16.
Absolutely.
So obviously I'm 19, and at the end of the day, I think this career is, especially the flying training one, is something that you're going to invest so much in that I couldn't imagine myself. I don't think I would have signed up to it if I planned to get in and get out in 6 years or 8 years. So it's not like a shock to me. I think perhaps it might be more of a maybe it might feel like more of a sort of, I don't know. So some people will see it as a bit of a noose, and so they won't do it. Wow. But if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But if you're going to go and do 7 years of training, then I suppose for me it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't matter. And the thing is, you've got to have a return. Flying training's a very lengthy process, of course, and it takes a lot of effort. So 12 years to me didn't sound very much. I did 20 in the end, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I would go back. Yeah. I would go back tomorrow, but I wouldn't, if you know what I mean. Because yeah. I mean, I've done it. It's like we were talking just before we started this about Plain Old Ben, who's got a YouTube channel. It's fantastic. He's a good friend of mine. He's always at airborne filming his stuff with GoPros everywhere, isn't he? He's crazy. Yeah. So he's got a good Instagram. If people are interested in light aircraft flying, look for Plain Old Ben. Go and find him. And he keeps wanting me to go flying with him. Like I keep saying, I just. It's nothing to do with him. It's just he gets all upset. It's I flew for 20 years without a break. I never had a ground tour, and the last thing I want to do at the moment is jump in an airplane. I'm giving it some time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But saying that, my brother wants me to go and visit him in Dubai pretty soon, so I'm gonna have to get on a big airliner, aren't I? He's probably going to be flying it and. Shudder. He's younger than me. I have to look after him. But that's pretty cool. So I was going to ask the last thing. For people that really are obviously following fast jet performance, I'll be putting a lot of stuff out like this. It's basically it's high performance for everyday people, which includes me now because I'm in business and stuff at the moment. What did you get out of stuff that I'd written that helped you? Was it in any way like motivating? Was that it? Or was there, do you realize about failure? It was all right to fail thing? Or was there anything that you went, you know what, that's kind of helped me. I'm going to use that as a kind of thing to move myself forward.
Yeah, I thought a lot of the stuff on failure was actually really interesting. So I sort of initially started watching and reading your vlogs, obviously due to the fact that it was due to the fact that you were a military pilot, and I can't think of another RAF person that is on YouTube. You know, there's a couple of US Navy, US Air Force guys doing that, but there was no one in the RAF, so that's why I got interested. I then went on to read some of the stuff about when you were actually on deployments, and then I moved on to looking at some of the sort of leadership stuff, which I then, found really interesting because obviously I ended up writing to you in the end. And a lot of stuff about failure. Obviously, you mentioned before about the sort of fairly controversial post you made about that sort of deliberate failure disorder, right. because because it set that person up, and that sort of resonated with me a bit because obviously you do fail, and failing is learning at the end of the day. So yeah, I thought it was quite cool.
And that's interesting because I try and get people to write, by the way. A guy recently on LinkedIn, I liked his article. He'd written about depression or something, an ex-GR backseater, ex-tornado backseater. So I try and get people to write. But when you write, you become very exposed. So when I was writing on the squadron, I knew this was happening, and I was OC standards anyway, and my writing was for the students in flying training, and I was like, guys, we've got to be honest about this, because very soon you're going to be over North Syria, and no one else is going to be at the airplane with you, okay? So you've got to be able to deal with these kind of things yourself, and that's why I started writing. But the article about failure, now that's not a traditional way of dealing with students. We don't go, we're going to fail you. And this, I think, because that's never going to work out well for anyone to say, we're going to fail you and see how you deal with that. That's not it. The person in question had a bad run, and we, my team of 12, we were all discussing it for a long time, and it was a case of, well, if we get this person towards the end of the course, they're going to fail anyway at a really, really damaging time. They haven't failed in their life already. Let's stop them flying now. Let's stop them now. We'll put them back through 6 trips and just solidify their training, see how they get on with it, see how they cope, and hopefully, and now they're flying Typhoon.
So to check them out,
yeah. So, and I think a lot of it's very easy to be critical of people that put themselves online, because obviously we're exposed, so you can throw a comment out and then you can go and have a bath. It doesn't matter, go to bed. I have to deal with that comment. I have to kind of answer that. And a couple of my instructors said that. They said, that's the wrong thing to do. And I said, well, that's not the wrong thing to do, because if we hadn't done it, well, not my instructors, these were instructors on a different squadron, but if we hadn't done it, then that person would never have got to the front line, and we've spent £7 million on that person. We have a responsibility to look after them. So that's what I say. In your flying training, you're going to fail something. You just are. Did you fail any PPL trips at all when you were doing that?
I've not really done enough.
No, okay. Yeah. But you will. I mean, it's one of those things. You never have great days. One of the things is you never see all the problems that everyone else sees. This is why you have course folders. You put all your tick sheets in so everyone can see them. The moment you start hiding your tick sheets, your course grade sheets in flying, the moment you start hiding them is the moment you're going to start failing trips, because you're gonna hide yours, and someone else is not going to show you theirs. The whole course fragments.
Yeah.
Then I come along as an instructor and I say, right, guys, we're going to fail all 4 of you unless you give us your grade sheets now, and you put them in that folder and you sit down and you read each other's grade sheets, because I might give you a series of emergencies one trip, but your buddy, I have to give him a different series of emergencies, and I have to give. So you won't see his emergencies, and he won't see yours, and you've got to share that knowledge. Yeah. So it's about teamwork going through the whole thing, and if you don't, you just see whole courses destroy themselves. It's horrendous, and there's no need to it. So there's no need for it. So we're quite animated when courses don't look after each other, and we just stop them flying. Literally, right? You guys are going to stop flying, sit on the ground for a week, get to the bar, chat to each other, whatever, and come back and improve. And if you haven't improved, we'll fail the whole course. You know what I mean? And that's been done before. Courses have failed. So yes, you will take the knock if you do fail a trip. It's nothing personal. It's just that they need to get that information in you somehow. Look, that's awesome. Your knowledge has been really useful, I think, for a lot of people. And I will deal with the email fallout from this, where everyone now writes to me. So because of you,
I think on some of the topics I might have been a little bit sort of inspecific. Now, you said before that I was on the I'm part of that Patreon forum. So if there are people that want to sort of ask like specific questions, I'll say that I was the guy in this video, and if you want to ask, that's fine. I've just got one question for you that I think I mean, it's something that I've been interested in. Obviously, you're an instructor. Do you obviously the guys that go to Fast Jet, and obviously it's a select few, have demonstrated that they're obviously above average in their flying ability. Now, do you look for a certain personality type as well? You know, sort of different traits, you know, for that person, or is it purely based on their flying?
No, it's not based on the flight. You have to remember, a lot of people don't want to fly fast jets, so they genuinely don't, and I fully understand this. I mean, there's a lot to be said. Like my kid brother, you know, him throwing a Hercules into, you know, landing on a beach or whatever at night to pick up special forces. I mean, that stuff is crazy hard. It really is. So it's a very different skill set to, say, a fast jet guy, or who's a very much information processing machine, especially at medium level now, or a rotary mate who's, you know, literally bringing his helicopter into hot landing zones, taking rounds in it, you know, firing out from the window, getting the boys out. I think a lot of people, especially when they hold, they go to different areas and they say, you know what, I don't care. I want to go and I want to fly Merlin or Puma or whatever, or Chinook, whatever it is, or want to fly A400. And then they throughout flying training, they tell their instructor, look, I'm deep into this airplane. And you'll find instructors in your flying training that have flown that before, and you'll just grow to those people. Or you might find a guy that you hugely respect, and you go up to him and you start chatting in the bar or whatever, or in the gym, and he's like, maybe he's a Herc mate or something, and you're like, I love his stories, I really want to be part of that. So there's a lot of self-selection that goes on. Okay. And I don't think people realise that. So obviously I did phase 4 flying training, so my guys and girls were all jet people anyway. So all we had to do was pretty much work out which type of aircraft they flew, which for me was either going to be, for these guys it was going to be F-35 Typhoon or Tornado. And a lot of guys, for example, wanted to fly, when I say guys, I mean guys and girls, I'm just using a lot of guys wanted to fly Tornado because it was mandrolic, old school, wings, reheat, last of the, you know, the real jets, as it were. Other people love the Typhoon, and then some guys went, you know what, can I get on the F-35? I think that whole kind of data processing stuff is going to be fascinating. So, you know, it's really hard to explain, but when you do the streaming, and that's when you finish a course, and the instructors, so normally it'd be someone like me, OC standards, and it would be maybe your flight commander, whichever flight you're on, maybe your primary instructor if you still have a primary and early stage of flying training. They go and sit around. Normally the station commander's there. 22 group, who are the group that you'll be under, they're there on video link, and they say, right, we've got these airplanes for these guys to go onto. How many have you got? And I'd say, well, I've got 7 guys graduating end of this week. Okay, let's talk it. And you spend about 30 or 40 minutes talking through each individual about, and the first thing you start with is you say, this guy really wants to go onto Typhoon. That's the first thing that 22 group hear, because 22 group are the ones that tell us how many slots they have available. So we say, look, he really wants to go Typhoon, and he showed great aptitude for it, and he's worked really hard, etc., etc. And you go through everyone, and if we can match people to their aspirations, then you do. But if there's an RPAS slot or something that's up there, or there's maybe a job at 100 Squadron or something, then you've got to work it out. You've got to say, well, we're going to have to put that guy into 100. We have to put that guy onto something he doesn't want to be on. And that's just how it is. But you're talking early stage now. So you're talking about what kind of personality. And all I'd say is that it tends to be the guys that are quite self-assured, but they're not arrogant with it. And people like in flying, not arrogant. That's the wrong word. What I mean is the guys that come through on jets tend to be less showy, I found.
Less showy.
Yeah, less showy. They're quietly confident, but they're also really hardworking. So it's the guys that end up on jets. I'm not saying the other strands aren't hardworking, because they really, really are. But you have to remember as well that if you are struggling in your flying training, there tends to be a stress level that's animated. It's a bit more elevated, and so you tend to be a bit more. I don't know, you're not as quietly confident and self-assured because you're failing trips, or you might struggle on a trip. So there's a correlation now between the people that tend to be doing better in flying training naturally and guys that are just generally quite confident about themselves and quite self-assured. And I'm not saying it's the quieter types, but if I put my money on it, there'd probably be a lot more quiet types, I guess, in jet world than there would be.
That's interesting. I sort of...
Yeah, because you have this. Yeah, you have this stereotypical view of maybe people like, you know. I'm not saying anything against the Reds. Yeah, I'm not saying anything against the Reds. The Reds are great people, but the Red Arrows, the Red Arrows have got to be in front of the camera. Yeah, I'm in front of the camera, so I'm quite animated. But you find a lot of jet guys are just not like that at all.
That's interesting.
Throw them in a bar on a Friday night, everyone gets naked. Of course they do. But in general, you want to speak to my wife about being a jet pilot. It is quite. I hate to say tedious existence. It's quite repetitive, but everyone's quite down to earth. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, and you probably don't think they are because you probably haven't met a few yet, but they're just down to earth, quiet people.
You don't meet them, do you, unless you're around them?
Yeah. Well, I guess they've got nothing to prove, have they? Either there's nothing to show. No. They're just happy to get on and do the job. Yeah. It's same with special forces guys. Special forces guys isn't going to tell you he's a special forces guy. He's going to just sit in a bar and have a beer and go and have a workout because he's got nothing to prove.
Yeah.
And a jet guy's got nothing to prove really. So, but also I think people that go onto jets and fly jets within these flying training pipelines, they've kind of come to terms with themselves about failure a lot. They've said, if I don't make this, I've got other options.
Yeah.
I'm working hard enough. That's the wrong thing to say. I'm working as hard as I can to make this come true for me, that if for some reason I don't get onto fast jets, I know I've done everything in myself to try. I'm not going to look back and regret this because I've worked as hard as I can. I've been on the squadron, early. I've been on the squadron late. I've done the work, spoken to people about it, hit the books, helped out my team, helped out my course. Really got down to that. And if I fail something at the end and I just don't make that grade by a little bit, I'm more than happy to go and fly something else, and I'll be really privileged to do that because I know that I'm an officer first and I'm a pilot second. And as long as you remember that, your role is to be an officer in Her Majesty's Royal Air Force first, piloting comes second, then you'll have a great career. It's a great time to be in. There's so many awesome aircraft coming through at the moment. Seriously, I look at my guys flying links to the back of frigates. I've kept you a bit long. We better shut this up. But
yeah, sure.
And I've missed. I know I've missed a chunk of aviation that I will never get. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would love to have gone back and to being a Lynx pilot, flying at night off the back of a ship. That would scare the hell out of me. But or doing what my kid brother did. Throwing Hercules down valleys and stuff and landing on beaches and all the troops running out. Or I think it's just great. Whatever you go and fly now is just fantastic, and
sweet.
That's it. So what I'm saying is, don't manufacture your personality. That's not the case.
Just fall into whatever it is, I guess.
Yeah, fall into whatever it is. But in flying training, just be that guy that's helping everyone else out.
Yeah.
And be enthusiastic about it because you might not get the chance. And here's the other thing as well. And I'll just leave you with this, just so you're under no illusions. But obviously, we've got a lot of people in flying training at the moment. We're going to get them through. I say we. I'm not involved in it anymore. But I know 22 groups. I speak to them. They have got plans to get them through. We've got contingencies in place. But obviously, holding is a bit of an issue. But back in 2008. What happened was they realised they had too many people in, and they in effect sacked 170 students from flying training. And I was one of the instructors, and a lot of the students literally went overnight, got great jobs with Cathay and some other airlines. They're doing very well now. They're getting they want some big money. But so they've obviously every cloud and stuff. But what I'm saying is, if for some reason you're not enjoying your flying training, and then they make a whole world of guys redundant, you'll regret not enjoying your flying training. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just really appreciate what you're doing, what you're going through, 'cause it's a really unique experience. And, you know, when you get on a frontline type, whatever, give me a call and we'll talk about, you know, how those hopefully 3 or 4 years have gone. If it's 6 or 7, then something's gone wrong, isn't it? But we'll do that. We'll talk about your journey, but that'd be awesome. So, yeah, have you got any other questions for me? You know where to find me anyway. You're in the Patreon group. You know, seriously.
Yeah.
I'm always pointing a phone at my face and giving you guys free information. This stuff is, you know, wherever I am, I'm saying, here's some stuff I want to tell you. You know what I mean? I say it's free. It's not actually, because you're paying $12 a month for that privilege. You're so lucky.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It helps me buy these really posh microphones and stuff.
Yeah.
We've covered the use of simulators, which we've stressed is very beneficial. We've said that Air Training Corps does have some benefits. It's called Air Cadets now, isn't it? Air Cadets does have, it does have some benefits, and I think anything like that.
I mean, it's got loads of benefits. I just didn't read them.
Yeah, no,
it's an amazing organisation. Yeah.
It really is. It's struggling a little bit with the flying at the moment, but it's coming back in now with AEF stuff. So there's a lot of air experience flying. Love the fact that you did not go down that pipeline of doing maths and physics and what you went, I'll do business, because that's interesting. Business is interesting.
Right.
Economics is fascinating as well. And then you went and picked something you really wanted to do, which was drama. Which obviously allowed you to pull the wool over the face of OSC with your acting abilities, isn't it? So that's fantastic.
Indeed.
We're not going to tell everyone to go Navy Aptitude test first, because that's a bad thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I get swamped with emails otherwise. And you mentioned the app, that Pilot Aptitude Tests app. So I'll try and get a link to that.
It's an iOS app. I don't think it's on Android.
Is it iOS?
But there's
okay.
There is there's another app called CBAT, literally it's called CBAT, which has got that and more. So write that down as well. And to be honest, I thought I'd throw in the Navy thing and let you figure it out. Because it was a bit of a fluke one for me. I thought it was right.
Good knowledge. Good knowledge, and there's no reason why we shouldn't exploit that. I tell people to put in dual applications. There's no reason why you shouldn't put a dual application in. You want to be a service pilot, and it's very difficult when you're not actually serving to know which is the best, which service is more appropriate for you. You don't really know. So get the application in to a couple of services, go and explore them, phone them up and say, can I go and do a visit at Cold Rose? People used to phone me up as well. People used to get on the website to me when I was flying at Valley and say, Tim, can I come up and see Valley? And I said, yeah, I've got a holding student who'll look after you. I'd get a holding student and say, right, give this guy a call. He wants to join the RAF. Bring him up here. If we can fly him, we will, but we might not be able to, but we'd definitely get him up at Valley and show him around the squadron. So if you don't ask, you don't get, you know, that's the thing. So I'd just rather people didn't phone me up to sort that out, because I find it difficult now. So I don't really have the connection. I have the connections, but the main connection is the boss of 4, and I'm not going to phone him up and try and get some holding officers to do anything, because he's a mate of mine.
I mean, is it a lot of sort of who you know in the
for when you're going through and you want to go on holding? Yeah,
just for these little, you know.
No, not really. It's not who you know. No, when you're in the service, you have to remember that you're a fellow officer in the service. So it's not who you know. We don't do that. Some people might say, yeah, it is. It's not. If we can accommodate people at Valley, and someone writes to us and says, can I come up? You know, I'm a holding officer, I'm pre-AFT or whatever. Can I come to Valley? If I can fit him in on the squadron, there's no reason why I can't necessarily fit someone in there, especially if there's a job that I could get them to do. So I'm like, well, our admin lady, you know, she could really do with some help. So yes, come up here. The thing is, what I don't want is a holding officer sat around doing nothing. We had a holding officer come up, great guy, real clever guy. He was just out of IOT, like he was into coding and stuff, and he wrote some domestic stuff for us and everything, helped us get airborne and get all the maths done and everything like that. So that was really useful. So you know, that kind of stuff, we just don't want holding people sat around getting bored. You know, there's a lot to do at Valley now. There's a lot to do. So if you want to go to Valley, but there's other places, of course, as well. 100 Squadron is pretty good for taking people.
Actually, I went there for a day.
You did?
Yeah. I didn't go near any planes because they were a bit busy. But,
yeah, they are busy. They're about to get even busier with flying training pretty soon. See,
I know, right?
I'm not a fan of that. That's an initiative I find difficult to put guys. It's
so we're going to have some of them on the T1 and some of them on T2.
Well, they're going to have to do a bit of T2 time coming off T1. I can't see how you send a T1 guy onto F-35. I don't think that's a responsible thing to do in any stage. I think you've got to put them back through T2. So now you've got the burden still on T2. The burden is still there on these 28 airplanes split across 2 squadrons to take, whatever. I'm not in the system anymore. I feel sorry for the guys on 100 Squadron, and I know who they are. I know who the ex-instructors, because I flew with them, who are now flying as aggressors on 100, that are going to have to do this instruction on 100. And it's a deviation from their core task, is what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't even want to get into UKM FTS at the moment because I get myself into trouble, but you know how I feel about it. We spoke about confidence and humility. I really like the fact you brought that up, and we put enthusiasm in there as well because, you got to be enthusiastic about what you're doing.
You've got to be keen, haven't you? You've got to.
But what if you weren't? What if you weren't enthusiastic and you failed flying training, or if you weren't enthusiastic and you failed OASC? Can you imagine that? You'd be sitting at home now. You're going, I wish I'd shown a bit more enthusiasm.
Yeah, you fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Get up there, enjoy the process. Seriously try and enjoy it. And that's brilliant. So there's a lot we got out of that. I think that's awesome. I think the guys are going to really appreciate you sacrificing your time.
Oh, no, it's cool. No, it's a pleasure to speak to be honest.
Yeah, that's all right. That's really great. So you're not working at the moment and you're waiting for your entry?
Yeah, I got my formal offer through last week. So I'm still waiting for my security clearance.
Okay.
But I sacked off Nandos and I thought I'll just deal with the financial consequences for the next few months. Take out a credit card.
That's awful. You could have given me like a free card for Nandos. I hadn't been to Nandos before.
I'll get you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I was working down with a company for ASDOT, this whole new big program that unfortunately is now being not supported by the MOD. But I had to go and eat out every night. I was in hotels and I drove past the Nandos. I'd never been to Nandos before ever in my life.
It's overrated, I'll be honest. It's overrated and overpriced.
So I went in there. I didn't realise you had to. You go and order at the till.
Yeah,
you pay.
Then
you sit down. So I literally went up to this lady and I said, this girl serving there. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you get a menu? Can you order for me? And I'm just going to go and pay money. And that's what she did. She ordered me some chicken wings, everything. I sat down. You put that sauce thing on them. It's not me. You
know what? It's not everyone's cup of tea. To be honest, we get a lot. The restaurant that I've worked in is in a really affluent area.
Oh yeah,
it's full of snobs. A lot of who have no idea what they're doing. So they'll walk in, they'll walk straight past you, and then they'll say, "Why are there no menus out?" Oh well, you've just walked straight past me, haven't you?
That was me. I had no idea. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm lost.
You wouldn't have been a You get a lot of
seriously.
You get a lot of it's all right. I've been there long enough.
Exactly. You've done your time in Nandos. You've done your 3 years in Nandos. You sacrificed yourself for Nandos. I should be very proud of what you've done. Excellent. Well, look, I really appreciate it. It's been a great chat. I'll get this out over the next couple of days anyway, and hopefully, people will really benefit from it. So I really appreciate for you feeding back into this, and that's awesome. All right.
So if you've got a link to the actual Patreon forum,
yes,
where where you said the fallout is going to come out. I don't mind answering some of them questions. Just links.
It'll be what I'll do is I'll put this obviously on Patreon in its full. I'll put the full this whole full thing there because what I tend to do is I tend to abbreviate a little bit now onto YouTube or something because it's easier for us to do that. And then what will happen? People will watch this on Patreon in the Warrior forum. And if you go onto Patreon and or Patreon/Tim Davies, you'll find that Warrior. You know where it is. I'm saying for other people, the Fast Jet Performance Warrior forum. Come and join us in that. And that's where the people get this full. They'll get this full interview thing, and then they can comment. And then if you want to be answering questions, or I'll answer questions anyway. Doesn't matter. It'll be in there. Yeah. It'll be cool. All right.
Sweet.
I'll do this bit now where I sign off, and then I'll say goodbye.
All right. Yeah.
That's the cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much, and Jamie. I really appreciate it. As I said, any comments, then whack them down in the YouTube comments. I'll try and get some answers for you. Else, join us over at Patreon. Then search for Tim Davies. It's the Fast Jet Performance, High Performance Warrior Forum, where we talk about these things, and I'll give you some real kind of advice about high performance for everyday people. Thanks so much. Then Tim Davies, Fast Jet Performance.